You're listening to Real Talk Texas with local expert Steve Hakes. Now, here's Steve.
Welcome back to Real Talk Texas. I'm Steve Hakes. I'm your host, and today we're talking about how to protect your assets. And we've got Lori Ashmore Peters with the Ashmore Law Firm based in Dallas here. And Lori, one of the things we talked about on the break was just kind of covering for the average person out there, if I need a will or I need, something like that, why wouldn't I just go online to freewills.com or something like that and get some kind of a thing that I could put together? I know Texas is a different state than most. What's the risk in doing that?
It is buyer beware. I can't say that those online sites won't work, but what I can tell you, and unfortunately, because we've seen the worst, you're not going to know that will isn't going to work until after you're gone, which means your loved ones are the ones left to unravel everything. If you would have gone to an attorney, you know that will is as good as gold. You know it does everything you want it to do. When you pass away, like I said, in Texas, probates, it's fairly easy. It's fairly simple. Whereas if you went online, prepared your will, it could work or it couldn't. And if it doesn't, you may have turned a $2,500, $3,500 probate process into a $5,000 on up probate process because you found out too late and your loved ones found out too late that the will you prepared online isn't what you needed. It didn't do everything you needed it to do.
And at Real Talk Texas, we're trying to provide you with real experts that are local. And a lot of times we talk about the real estate market and different things like that you hear on the news, which is typically national news. And so what we're doing here is we're providing local information, local people here in the Metroplex that are your experts that you can lean on and that you can ask questions of. And Lori's been great to come in our studio today to do that. And, okay, Lori, so today we've talked about wills, we've talked about probate, we've talked about trusts, we've talked about LLCs, FLPs, all these different acronym things that the average listener will need to learn from you. But what is an estate? I hear that term a lot. I have my vision of what it is. How do we define what's an estate? What are we talking about?
An estate is everything you own. It is your house, any real estate you own, your checking account, saving account, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, annuities, 401ks, life insurance policies. It's also your business interests, your limited partnership interests, your LLC interests. It's also, if you're involved in a lawsuit, if you get an award from a lawsuit, all of that is part of your estate. A lot of times people will come into me to say, oh, I don't have any estate tax issue. I really don't have much. I don't come anywhere near the $5 million estate tax exemption that's this year, at least for the next few weeks. But in talking to them, they may be right up on it. And they may tell me between my house, my investment accounts, money market, checking account, savings account, stocks, bonds, I come up to about $3.5 million. When I ask them, do you have a life insurance policy? And they say, well, of course I have a life insurance policy. I have a, $4 million life insurance policy, but that's not part of my estate because I don't benefit from it. Well, as far as the IRS is concerned, that's part of your estate.
Wow.
And what I tell people is when they look at their estate, you've got two different, if you can imagine this, pots. And one pot we call a non-probate pot. One pot we call the probate pot. And again, if you get the book, all of this is explained in there. But the IRS is looking at both pots together. Your will only controls what's in that probate pot. The non-probate pot, is contractual. It's your life insurance policy where you have properly designated a beneficiary. It's that money market account or brokerage account or savings or checking account where you have designated a right of survivorship account or a pay on death account. It's that trust, that revocable trust that you set up. All of those are non-probate assets, so your will won't control what happens to that. But as far as the IRS is concerned, that's all part of your worth when they take a look to determine whether or not you fall into an estate tax category.
Wow. Sounds like there's a lot to it. Okay, so Lori, if I'm sitting out there, I'm listening to Real Talk Texas, and I'm saying, okay, I probably need to talk to somebody. Lori, I'm going to come in and see you. Is there any homework I need to do to get prepared to talk about my assets?
The first thing I tell people is, we've got a questionnaire that they can fill out, and I tell them that they really need to sit down and determine what their assets are, because majority of people out there don't realize they have as much as they have unless they really put pen to paper. Not only that, but I also tell people, you know what, read the book, because it gives you the definitions, and it's an educational piece so that you know exactly what's going on. Everyone does need a will. It's so that you make sure that you stay in control. You dictate who manages your estate. You get to decide who gets your estate. If you have minor children, you're choosing who the guardians are of that child. You set up trusts that are necessary within your will. But what a lot of people don't understand is there are two types of wills. One is a will that's typed up. It's a formal will. You go to an attorney's office and you have that prepared. The other will is what we call holographic. It's all in your handwriting. If it is 100% in your handwriting, it is signed by you and it is dated by you and it has the certain buzzwords that are needed, it's as good as going to an attorney and drafting one up. Do I recommend that for everybody? No, because again, depending on what you have going on in your life and depending on what your assets are, you need to go to that attorney. But if it's a quick will that you need to prepare, then I talk to folks and tell them, you know what, just prepare it completely in your handwriting. If you have a typed will and you start making handwritten changes to it, that will is no longer good.
Oh, really? So even if I initial it and say I initialed the change?
Correct. It either has to be completely in your handwriting or completely typed.
Well, okay, say I handwrote a will. What do I do with it next? Put it in my drawer? Or
That's it. That's all you have to do. Let someone know where it is. It doesn't even have to be on a piece of paper. It can be on the back of a napkin. It can be on the back of a business card.
Can I do a videotape of myself saying what it is?
Better written.
Okay, all right. Great. Okay, well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is I want our listeners out there to really pay attention to this story that I'm about to tell you. And it really struck home to me, and you know, it's one of those things we all think we're going to live forever, right? So I was doing a refinance for someone that was referred to me, and he's a chiropractor in Austin. And this gentleman is in perfect health. I mean, he runs a few miles every day. He's holistic. He really doesn't see doctors. He basically lives that chiropractic life of, we can just use massage and physical therapy, things like that. And this gentleman was a great guy to work with. We had gotten all the information. We were clear to close on his loan, going to lower his monthly payment, help him out there. And we were getting ready to schedule the closing. So I called his cell phone and left a message and said, "Hey, Don, we're ready to close. Let me know what works for you." I didn't hear anything back. The next day I call him back, didn't hear anything back. Following day, I call again, and then I get a phone call from a area code in Alaska, and it was Don's brother. And he said, "Steve, I know you've been working with Don, but you need to know that he's in the hospital. He's not doing very well." I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Well, he's in a coma right now." And I said, "Oh my God, just we'll pray for him. Let me know how things are going." So the next day he calls me back and says, they've diagnosed him and he's got a brain tumor, and it's a very, very aggressive one. And I knew Don had two daughters, and so we had talked about that. They were both in college or out of college in that age, so they were older, and so we were waiting to hear something, and then I get the call from his brother again that Don had passed away. And so we, of course, canceled the loan file, and we were just, feeling pretty bad about the situation. And then the very next day, I get a call from his oldest daughter. And she says, "Steve, I know that you were working with my dad on trying to get his home refinanced. Do you have a copy of the appraisal? I think we want to sell it. We don't know what to do with it. My dad, he's, everything's positive and going. Nothing's ever going to happen." He did not have anything. He didn't have a will. He didn't have anything to protect the equity, and quite a bit of equity in his house for his daughters. And so there was absolutely no direction for the courts. It was going into probate, but by the time everything was happening, the girls couldn't afford the house. So the house went into foreclosure. I tried to get them to be able to qualify, couldn't do that. And here's a situation where, Lori, what would you have done for my client had you caught him before this incident?
Number one, just make sure that his estate plan is in order. Make sure that he does have a will that dictates who manages his estate upon his death, and that dictates who gets that house and who gets that property. Set up trusts perhaps during his lifetime to make sure that when that property does go to his girls, that they do have a way to maintain that house and the payments. Another thing is life insurance. Get a life insurance policy that can pay off the house upon his death. So if we would have caught him early enough, there is quite a bit that we could have done for him to where those girls would have received the house and received his assets.
And the oldest daughter was living in the house, and now she has to move out because
Correct.
They've lost the house, they've lost the equity. Again, if you're listening out there and that story hits home for you, and you're in great shape and nothing's ever going to happen to you, and you're all good, let's stop and think about the loved ones that you leave behind. Let's also think about how to protect your assets, and let's be smart about this going forward in your life. And so reach out to me here at realtalktexas.com. Get Lori's book on Do I Really Need a Will? It's a lot more than just that. So just go to the website, realtalktexas.com, send me a note, and ask me for the book. So I appreciate you listening to realtalktexas.com. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to talk about how to build a house and how to protect yourself throughout the process and make sure that when that home is done, that you have a loan in place and ready to go so that you, no matter what happens to you, you still can move into that new house that you're building. So thanks for listening. Have a great Sunday.
This program is brought to you by the Real Estate Radio Network. Visit realestateradio.us for more info. That's realestateradio.us.